Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from California and Canada. This is the real episode 18 of Tending Lilith's Fire with Kohenet Annie Matan, my wonderful co-host, and myself, Deborah Grenn. And we were talking about veiling and many aspects of that, the things that open our eyes or that stop us from seeing, feeling, hearing, sensing the things that we need. Whether they come in divine or human form. And so I'm going to start off with a wonderful poem from Judy Graham. They say she is veiled. They say she is veiled and a mystery. That is one way of looking. Another is that she is where she always has been, exactly in place. And it is we who are mystified, we who are veiled and without faces. It's from the Queen of Wands, and it's been kind of an organizing principle in some of my work over the last few years, so I wanted to share
that. So we've been talking about the veil. What is the veil? And this came up in a reading I did last night in Living from the Heart. I pulled this card, I guess I can show, from the Journey of Love deck by Lana Fairchild. The card was beauty, but the interpretation that came through was about the veil being lifted so that we can see that which we've been seeking. And it's been available to us the whole time. Pardon the pun. So that's sort of what sparked this conversation is accessing. I think we're talking about yearning for and wanting access to the divine, and the veil maybe being a false wall between us and what we want. And I'll share also that for me personally, I feel I have easy access to feeling the divine in my life, to feeling goddess in my life, in a spiritual sense, in a sense of like otherworldly guidance. And my particular yearning is for human aspects of the divine in my life, believing that we are all God and we are the embodiment of the divine on earth. And I'm saying, okay, please send me your body in human form, for support and love and connection, all of those things. And I wonder, what is the veil? What is it that I'm not seeing that's right in front of me?
And I just want to respond to that for a moment to say, that's the one that's tougher for me, the divine. And you brought up something that Rabbi David Ingber said years ago, and I've heard my teacher, Rabbi Nadya say as well, and that, hers is a little different, but there's a concept called Devakute in Judaism, and it means yearning. And so do you want to say again what?
Yeah, so Rabbi Ingber said at a Nelachim High Holy Day service in 2006, God is in the yearning. And I love that teaching. It's like, it's been very nourishing for me over the years, rather than the yearning being the space between.
Exactly.
That is where I can find her.
That alienation. So a slightly different framing language-wise came to me, and it was a great revelation to me when I felt that I could never establish enough or deep enough divine connection, because, and that was the Devakute, was that yearning. But what I learned from Reb Nadya was simply that God, exactly, really pretty much what you said, God is in the yearning. You are connecting, you are unified. There is union in that moment. And it's just a slight difference of the wording, but I heard it differently, yes. I guess, and it made sense to me. And of course, then it seems less a myth of Sisyphus type of effort that we, something rolling the rock up the hill and we can never accomplish getting to the top of the hill. It could be right in front of us and present. And that was a great lifting of a veil for me.
And did it change your experience of connecting with the divine?
Yeah, and also I think maybe more intellectually than emotionally and spiritually, but I'm not sure I even know the ways in which it's affected me, on a spiritual level, but yet. We're in process every moment. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And I wonder, we're talking also about like, what is the veil, and, how does this show up for us? What are we not seeing that we want to see, and why? I wonder if you have more that you want to say about that.
When you say what is the veil, I hear it differently now than when you said it a few minutes ago, because I think it can be busyness, overly busyness, because my netzach, my energy, my goal-oriented behavior is something I've been looking at this week. I'm working a little bit on the Musar, an ancient Jewish ethical system, and so that's come up, and the concept of Yetzer Hara, which is often defined as the evil inclination, but it is also that impulse that gets us to build and to construct and to do things, to create. And so I have a lot of it. I have an overabundance of it, and so part of my work in the next 2 weeks is to moderate it a bit and to bring it more into balance, so that, as Nadya and many others have said, I am not just a human doing, but I make time to be a human being, and I love that languaging, because that's something I remember, and I can even laugh at myself about when I know I'm too wrapped up in creating new and many more, projects, classes, programs. So so I'm seeing that really as a veil. I'm definitely seeing it as an obstacle to hearing my ancestors well enough and often enough, because as we discussed, we've been doing a lot of ancestral work in this time of year when the veil is thinnest. And so that's another kind of veil, right?
No, but actually, I don't know if it's another kind of veil. I wonder if it's the same one, which is actually part of how we got to this conversation, is because this time of year, the veil being thin between us and the otherly realm, whether it's ancestral realm, divine realm. And so we have easier access to that which we seek.
Yes.
Whatever it is we're seeking, maybe.
But definitely to the ancestors. I had one appear in a dream who I've never dreamt about. She came a few days ago, and a few other things came up that were just interesting and unusual and ancestor related, if not actually the people. So yes, being too busy, not paying enough attention. As I told you, I wrote years ago in Lilith's Fire that we need to move from coma to consciousness. So it's about not sleepwalking through our lives, not getting so consumed with materiality and dailiness that we forget what's really important, whether that's in human form or divine.
Yeah. And there's something in the busyness that you mentioned about like doing less and slowing down, which makes me think about, I had lunch with a friend today. We had sushi and we were pouring tea, and these teapots, when they're very, very full and you pour them and it just pours everywhere. And I said something about like slow and gentle. I'm finding that actually as guidance in life, doing everything slower and more gently is wise, at least to start. And of course there was a sex joke in there, he made it. And I was like, yeah, it's true. But like we can learn, what's true in one place can also be true in another. What's true for sex can be true for teapots and can be true for connecting with the divine and ourselves, our thoughts, the people around us. And work. And what?
Even corporate work.
Yes. Great. And we're so socialized. So I love this idea that you're bringing of busyness as the veil, because we're so socialized, we're so conditioned and socialized to be human doings, that of course, when we're in the place of how are you doing? What are you doing? Productivity mode, we can't even sense ourselves, let alone the world around us. Yeah. And so I'm taking that in and thinking, right, what if I take that the same application slower and gentler than you think you need? And if I slow down and really aim to sort of open my senses, spidey senses of all sorts, to what is here. And I guess part of it is not only seeing with our eyes, right? It's like,
definitely,
because and I think Abraham Hicks talks about this too, like if we are looking for evidence of what is based on what has been before, we will not, we can't see what's possible based on what we've experienced in the past, because what's possible is much greater than what we've ever experienced before.
Absolutely. Which is why I always have hated it when you suggest an idea to someone and they say, well, we've never done it that way before.
I know. And you're like, that's why we've never gotten there.
It's such a narrow way of thinking. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I mean, we are socialized to this. We are conditioned to be productive and to see that as the only sign of success. And it's so ingrained that my father, Walter Joachim Grenn, Ibaye, in blessed memory, he would say sometimes when we'd be parting from each other at the end of a week, perhaps, have a good weekend, be productive. Okay, which do you want me to do? You know,
yes, I like that.
And, yeah, or produce. But that is so ingrained both in my sister and me. I think that it's very hard to take that time to replenish.
Yeah, and that I'm just like, wow, what if we? I love this space. I feel like I'm in this space now of just recognizing. Okay, so what if there is no veil, which I think we're saying is true. There is no veil. We create the veil. We imagine it. We're not how do we say this? I want to say it's like in the Matrix when the kid says, the truth is there is no spoon. Right? Because he's bending a spoon. He's like, right. So if the truth is there is no veil, then we are creating barriers for ourselves. And look, okay, no spiritual bypassing here. I just want to like take note. There are plenty of barriers between us and what we want that are systemic and institutional and real. And also sometimes, yeah, I want to say that is true. And also sometimes there are ways through, around, over, under the barriers that we are faced with, whether we created them or not, that we can't see because all we can look at is the barrier.
Right. And I'm not thinking, certainly what you said is true. And I wasn't even thinking of it in those terms, but rather in terms of our own development, our own ego, how we see each other, but especially ourselves, and how affected we are by mirroring how others mirror us or don't. You know, being witnessed is one of the in a positive way, is one of the most important things that we can have happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just leave it there.
Yes. And that's one where that makes me think of like a mirror in a dance studio. And that maybe we're putting up the veil because we don't want to be seen. Like, then what happens so ways we use veils that get in our way, you know, like between us and the divine, between us and in my case, you know, I'm like, what's beyond this barrier that I'm perceiving that's keeping me from feeling connected to humans in my life. And also maybe we're scared of being mirrored because we're scared of what we'll see, or we haven't found, as my therapist of many years ago, Karen Hack, taught me to surround myself with positive mirrors. And sometimes the people in our lives are not positive mirrors because they come with their own projections. And so they see in you whatever they're struggling with, as was my case at that time. And so that was a really important teaching for me, which I think is coming back around of, you know, who am I hanging around and what are they mirroring for me? And if it's not healthy and it's not positive, then I do need a veil. I need to close a curtain over that mirror and say, it's a funhouse mirror. I don't want it.
Excellent. Absolutely. And that's something we know, we've been hearing this a lot in common parlance the last few years, that means getting away from energy vampires, or recognizing people we deal with, whether at work or personally, who are that. And I just want to say, for anybody hearing that term for the first time, please look it up. If you're around people who sap your energy and you're not really conscious of it, but you know you don't feel good when you leave them, you're either sad or depressed or just completely wiped out, that can often be because of the energy the person is consciously or unconsciously putting out around you.
Yeah, there's a great book I can't believe I'm the one who's giving the book reference today.
Right.
Book reference today. There's a great book called Dodging Energy Vampires by Dr. Christiane Northrup. And it talks about how to identify where energy vampire stuff is happening in your life. And then the second half of the book is all about how to heal from it, using lots of different modalities, spiritual and practical. Super helpful book.
Yeah. I think there are also probably some TED Talks or YouTube things about this, but you want to hear it from a reliable source, and Christiane Northrup certainly is one of those, I think.
Yes, she's excellent.
Yeah.
I want to come back to also this idea of how do we open. And for me, an example of the experience of the veil in the Torah is when Hagar and Ishmael are banished from their household and they're in the wilderness, and Hagar is crying and encounters the angel, and he opens her eyes to the reality that was in front of her the whole time. There's a well here, you're not going to die. Everything you need is right here in front of you. And in your emotional distraughtness, you were so focused on the oy vey, this is clearly, I'm paraphrasing, focused on the legitimate, valid pain of the banishment and the fear for yourself and your child, that you couldn't see the resources, the gifts that were here, and that you're going to be okay. So I love that as an example of the veil being lifted. Years ago, I was taking a class with Melila, Hellner-Eshed, and Yossi Klein HaLevi at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. And we were asked, it was a class for rabbinical and cantorial students, and we were asked, each of us, to give a Pokeach Ivrim talk.
Which is?
A Petach Einayim. So it was a talk at the cross. So Petach Einayim comes from, it means the opening of the eyes, and it comes from the text about Tamar, Judah and Tamar encountering each other at a crossroads. And the idea was, bring your teaching that feels important, open our eyes. And so for me, I looked for other eye-open moments in the Torah, and then came across that Hagar moment, and offered also that, the invitation is to open the eyes of our hearts. So I was saying to Deborah before we started, at some point today, I want to sing for you a little bit of this gospel song, Open the Eyes of My Heart. And I want to sort of take note of what does it mean to look through, when I say, sometimes we're limited by what we can see with our eyes. So we need to bring our attention to other parts of us, whether our spiritual, our intuition, our hearts, our gut. What are the other places we can see from?
Well, I want to say, as you're giving that list, that intuition is its own veil lifter. And it's, if we trust that, if we trust our spidey sense, as you said earlier, of anything, it's something to pay attention to.
And
I want to hear that song.
Yeah, you want to hear it now?
I do.
Okay, great. So I'll put a citation for it in the notes. I learned it by listening to a video of the Oslo Gospel Choir, of all things, and it's become a favorite for me. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Goddess. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. High and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. You pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. High and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. You pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you.
I love that one as just a reminder. And also it makes me think of seeing through God's eyes, like opening the eyes of our hearts so that we can see, because I believe we are all God, and so that we can see each other as divine. And we can see what God sees. And so maybe when our eyes are failing us or our senses feel like they're failing us and all we can see is the veil, and we know, this is what I'm experiencing, I feel like I see a veil and I know the veil is not real and I want to see beyond it. If my senses can't get me there, lend me yours. Show me what you see.
Beautiful. And I would think we're more able to access that when we remember our own divinity, which is what you're saying.
Yes, there's an embodiment exchange happening in the show me. I started with I am yearning to feel and experience other humans as aspects of you. And I feel like in singing and embodying this, I'm reminded of myself as a human who is an embodiment of the divine.
Beautiful. Yeah. There's also a quote that I just want to close with, because my partner is a sci-fi aficionado, let's say, and so I just wouldn't feel right if I didn't close with the quote from Robert A. Heinlein, "Thou art God." It's a partial quote, but so we all have many ways of saying the same thing in different words.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
We'll be with you next time.
We will. And watch for us also on Instagram now and then, doing IG Live, in which we'll either be continuing this conversation or possibly talking a few minutes about the next conversation. As always, we welcome your comments. Yes, if you like this, please like our channel and subscribe. Tending Lilith's Fire on YouTube. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thanks.